Hey, welcome to another edition of the Motor City Madmouth Show. Am I loud enough? I don't know. I don't want my special guest, Eric Hipple, to go deaf, but you know what? I'm the Motor City Madmouth. I spent a lot of money in that name. I'll be darned if I'm going to be the Motor City Mouth after a few $1,000s less, and I wouldn't want to have to go through the trademark things. Already been there, done that. Anyways, great show lined up. I have my quarterback. Hey, I have a manager, Mickey Cowan, and now I have a quarterback, and his name is Eric Hipple. Eric, thanks for joining us. And Candy will be on for the entire time as my co-host. Hey, it's great to have you on, Eric.
Thanks, Scott. Nice to be here. Hi, Candy.
Hi, Eric. Nice to meet you.
Mm-hmm. So for all you people on YouTube that are watching, feel free to chime into the chat room. Eric will be here to answer all your questions. Facebook, Twitter, wherever. We'll look forward to having you. And, of course, those of you that want to watch it later, you'll be able to do so as well. So I'm going to go over a little bit about Eric Hipple, and I'm just going to talk about his statistics first, and we're going to talk about a debut that was like no other. When I mean no other, we'll definitely make sure we found out exactly why it was like no other for sure. First of all, his debut, Eddie Prather, my co-host on Monday night, but on the Professor and the People. Glad to have you on, Eddie. Make sure you could be my fourth co-host if you want here, if you come in here and fire up those questions. All right, well, you want to talk about a Monday Night Football performance for the ages? How about this? Incredible national TV debut on October 19th versus the Chicago Bears. I know Candy Epley would have to love that result because she's a Packers girl. Anytime you beat the Bears is good, but when you do it by the tone of doing it 48-17, where you throw for 336 yards, 4 touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns, and to make matters even more interesting, as I understand it, that jersey was called by the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and I believe, I don't know, still there, but at that time they collected it anyways. And you were a 4th-round pick out of Utah State from 80 to 89, and I know you threw for a total of 10,711 yards. So all you people that you need to find your quarterback in the first round, the man in front of me is a classic example. You don't need them in the first round. They come a little bit later. We call those the hidden gems. All right, did I give you some chills here about that epic performance back in the day, Eric?
Sure. I mean, that comes up a lot because it was such a big explosion. Going from actually 3rd team, if you want to call in training camp. During training camp during 2 days, I was 3rd team, and then got accelerated to 1st team after an injury, and then after the backup played terrible, they named me the starter going on a Monday Night Football game going against Chicago Bears. And, I got to tell you, the anxiety that goes, during the season, but as a 3rd team quarterback, and I was a holder also, so I got to go on the field and, help for Eddie Murray as he kicked field goals. So that was kind of fun because I got a chance to go on the field. But going from 3rd team where you're not getting any action at all, except for maybe throwing the other team's defenses or our offenses in practice, to all of a sudden getting accelerated in basically 2 weeks, because it took 1 week for him to get hurt, took a week for the backup to get hurt. To play terrible, and then I got named. So, for me, it was like, this is great, my big chance. Wait for this moment. You think about it. You're all the background of working out in the summertime when you're in high school. Making through the high school, making through college. All that stuff culminates into this one moment that you're going to get this chance, and it's going to be on Monday Night Football, which is
right.
Big. But not only that, in my mind, I was thinking, oh, good, that means my parents can see the game. My college friends, and buddies can see the game. My high school friends and stuff could see the game. Pretty much everybody's going to be able to see this thing, right? And then, the anxiety, anxiousness actually, kind of set in and said, oh my gosh, everything done this one moment really comes down to. I even knew what the first play was going to be. It was going to be a pass play. So then you got all day to think about that. So I did a lot of pacing back and forth inside the hotel room. 9 o'clock kickoffs are hard because you got the whole day to think about it, right? And then you're just ready to go. But that first play was a pass, and it was complete about 40 yards down the field, and the place just erupted. And I would like to say that, that moment, it all of a sudden somebody hit a go fast button, and it just zoom, 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 zoom. And the next thing I know, it was almost halftime. It was just an explosion of activity. But, I ended up throwing for 4 touchdown passes, and I ran for 2 touchdowns in that game. So it all worked out pretty well.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like you had a whole career though in one night? I mean, obviously we can't disregard what you did for the time that you're in the NFL. You get an NFL pension, you're in the league a long time, better than most quarterbacks. But just think about a whole career in one night, Monday Night Football, to do what you did. I mean, that is so cotton picking surreal. It's ridiculous. I know you had a pretty good career, and my next topic is going to illustrate how good it really was. But think about that. Also, I want to point out Katie, put that thing up by Eddie Prather too. Great comment in the chat room. So we want to get this out to you, Eric. Eric, thank you for entertaining us football fans back in the day. You and Billy Sims are the first two lines I remember as a very young football fan. There you go. All you got to do, Eric, is hit somebody out. And this guy here, he did. So go back to my question here. But it almost seems like to me, it was like a whole career in one night, not to discount what you did anyways.
Well, in aspects, what you're saying is somewhat true. In fact, after, because I think there's a lot of people don't know about you or who you are. You do because you've traveled the journey. But what a lot of people don't know is, I was picked the first pick in the 4th round, but I'd actually had a knee operation between the end of my senior year and the draft. And so, so that might have had some hindrance to it. I had my knee was swollen, so I flunked a physical. But anyhow, but that one moment, right? The reason I say like a career in one game is because I didn't know how I was going to do. Nobody really does. You just anticipate. But after the game was over, the offensive coordinator, Bob Schnelker, walked over to me and he put his arm around me and he goes, "You just made a career for yourself."
Oh, really?
And, yeah, and that's exactly what he said. And I thought, I just played one game. What do you mean? Right? Well, I can tell you today, 30 some odd years later or however long it's been, that and people still talk about that. So I understand what he meant, how impactful that was, and how I guess special it was. And but I didn't think of it at the time. It was just all right. I get a chance to start, and it went really well. I ended up being named MVP that year. And we went on in the next few years. Went to playoffs twice and won the division here. So it's good.
So let me ask you a question. You know what GMTA stands for?
No.
Great minds think alike.
You
will be quizzed on that. You will be quizzed on at the end of the show. Just remember. All right, Candy, you have any questions about the fact that you love it when the Packers beat the Bears, let alone the Lions beat them that badly back in the time where you were just a little tight, Candy?
I mean, it's great to see anybody beat the Bears. Let's face it. No love lost against the Bears. Obviously, the Packers and Bears are one of the oldest rivalries there are. But my question is, a lot of us don't really, that we've never played the game. What is it like to go into another stadium? Like when you're traveling and going into an away stadium, how do the fans react to you and stuff like that?
Well, I've got two answers for you. Okay. One is if you're in a losing season, and so you're not going to playoffs, and you're at home, you'd almost rather be away because you're not gonna get booed at and that's when things are really bad. Because it's hard. Then sometimes an away game can be an escape, so it's fun to play. But man, when you got things rock and rolling, there is no better place than at home. And you go out and you challenge the other people, on their field, and so there's always something to overcome, which you're gonna have to overcome the crowd, maybe the officials, depends on how much home we're getting. And then also, it's a little unfamiliar, but I will tell you this: one of the favorite places to play for me, well, there's two of it. For the favorite place is Green Bay, just because of the tradition, and the field is always nice, even in the crap weather. It's nice because they heat it underneath. It's got a radiator underneath it, so the field's always doesn't freeze. But I had my best game. And when I say best game, I don't want to say by emotion or by what it looked like or the score, but we get graded after every game too. So after every game, the coaches sit down and they grade you, on every play. How did you do? Because you can, quite frankly, get an A, get a B, they kind of score you, right? Technical, but what happens is, so depending on did you do the read right? Did you take steps right? Did you, all that stuff? And I had a perfect game going for myself against Green Bay. And it was a beautiful day. The sun was out. It was crisp and clear. It was like one of those magical days when no matter what I did, it felt good, right? And just went up down the field and So I played my best game ever against Green Bay. So yeah.
Okay.
That's good. All right. Well, let's go to Eddie Prather. Candy, you got a couple up there we're going to hit Eric with. Then we'll move on to the next topic. And we're going to start with thank you for, all right. Thank you for being an advocate for mental health as a person who battled depression over the last 13 years since his mom passed away. There you go. As we get deeper into this, we're going to be talking more about that. I appreciate how much you advocated for mental health. Great stuff. And that's leading up to, and he doesn't like the Bears either. All right. So I was trying to be polite about it, but it's okay on because you don't know everybody. Garrick was, what was the worst field you ever played on in the NFL? That's a good question.
Well, it goes back to, like Milwaukee when they shared, the Green Bay would share, and come down to Milwaukee and play.
County.
Yeah,
County
Stadium. And the outdoor stadium in Minnesota was terrible before they built the dome. Now that's going way back, so it's kind of hard to say. And then, the AstroTurf was a lot different, then too, than it is now today. So we were blessed because we had an indoor stadium, with AstroTurf. And so weather really never affected us. But that AstroTurf wasn't always the best. The first AstroTurf had zippers in it, if you believe it or not. And so there was a hazard there, and it was also really, really hard. Today's AstroTurf is fantastic. So, but that would be the worst one, would be Minnesota and I would say probably Milwaukee, just because of the design of it and everything else.
Yeah, I never cared for County Stadium in terms of working in the press box. Only Metro, you had to deal with it. And I never went to Metropolitan Stadium, but I heard that was brutal too, wasn't it? So I can imagine. All right, so let's look. Now, you're regarded as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in Lions history with Matthew Stafford, Bobby Lane, Greg Landry, and Scott Mitchell. How does that make you feel when you're mentioned in the same breath as these guys?
Well, that feels pretty good. Yeah. Yeah. And, when you look back at your career, there's nobody's ever completely satisfied with it, right? Even Brady's not okay with his career. There's certain things you look back and say, oh man, if this could happen, if this would have done differently. And so there's always a part, like I think of everybody's own mindset when they look back and say, yeah, I had a great career, but I wish this could have happened. And so, I'm based on that. There's certainly these things I wish would have been different. But overall, like the injuries for one, but overall, I'm really happy with the way things worked out with me and my career and, staying here in Detroit and, all 10 years we're here. And so, it became home for me, and so it's been really nice.
Yeah, by the way, it's on the site of Metropolitan Stadium, the Mall of America. You ever been to Mall of America? That's what's there now. I know a lot about that place because number one, I had to rent a tux from Mall of America for a friend of mine who actually has been living there, and I stood up in this winning. So Mall of America is a whole lot more cozier than Metropolitan Stadium. I breathe you there. All right, let's continue on. Billy Sims and Jason Hansen and now Lomas Brown have been nominated to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Do you think any of those players are going to make it? If not right away, at some point down the road?
I think Lomas Brown should. What were the names you gave me? You gave me the names?
Yeah, you've got Jason Hansen, who I think should definitely get in, and Billy
Jason
Sims.
Hansen for sure. Yep.
And Billy Sims.
Billy Sims is going to be a tough one because he wasn't in long enough. I don't think he played long enough. And, so I don't think that's going to happen. That's just my opinion. He certainly had the potential and the ability to do it, but with his knee injury, it kind of took him out of the running when that happened because he had to call his career early. But but I think Lomas for sure.
Yeah, one thing about Billy Sims, I'll never forget. He, you talk about having a tough time over Metropolitan Stadium. He blew out his knee over at the Metrodome. And, it's even tough on us reporters down there wearing hiking boots that get stuck on that stupid artificial surface. I actually had to have my knee drained after I came back from that trip because they got caught up in that carpet there. Unbelievable. You talk about a painful trip. Listen, for a guy like me, I've had a lot of injuries too. I have a game named after me over at the toy store called Operation, okay? And I'm sure a lot of us have. Operation the Game. If you look at that fucking game board, you'll probably find all the different places I've been operating. I don't know if you ever heard that analogy. We're just getting warmed up, Eric.
No, I haven't heard that analogy, but I can relate to it. So
you ever play the game Operation? I hope.
I played the game Operation, and now it works all the way down to the kids and to the grandkids and stuff. It's one of those games that I think it's iconic because everybody knows about it. you know, the buzzer
Yeah.
and everything else, and the, you know,
Yeah.
and together somebody's bones. Now I look at it and go, oh, let's see, I had that hurt, and let's see, I broke that, and I had that hurt. So
Well, I had to throw that at you. Come on, Eric. Really, sir, I had to do it, man. All right, let's continue to talk about the Detroit Lions. Now, starting with Jared Goff, thoughts about him. We'll talk about Goff. What are your thoughts about Jared Goff?
well, I think, you know, I've gotten a lot of respect for him, you know, and he's got talent, no doubt. But more than anything, just the way he handled the whole situation from being traded, you know, for the Rams to here. And, you know, I don't know how he actually looked at it at the time, but it couldn't have been happy. He couldn't have been, you know, I mean, he took him to the, you know, Super Bowl, right? And they don't win, so they make a trade and end up, you know, him coming here to. So if you look at his point of view, I'm going to Detroit, which is not, it's not California, you know, as far as the sun and, you know, things to do and all that. But he comes here and then it's, oh man, we've been a losing team. You know, it's almost like, oh, they just dished me off and, you know, and I'm done. I'm going to go to the pasture now and roll over and die. And he did. He got here and he didn't say a word. He didn't complain, didn't bitch. He just worked his ass off and proved it. You know, proved that, you know, he deserved to be there. And you know, we're knocking on the door again. And so I've got a lot of respect for him. He's mentally tough. You know, a lot of people probably don't think that, but you know, just to face some of the situations. I mean, anybody that, especially with Dan Campbell, because going on fourth down, as many times you go on fourth down, and those are crucial. Those are that's a pressure play and a half, you know, because you have to make it go, right? And so he doesn't think twice about it, and he throws, you know, makes it work. Yeah.
So tell me, how tough is it to play the quarterback position in Detroit?
Well, I think it's tough because we've had a lot of changeover. I'm going through history where you know, you've had a lot of, you know, coach changes, some management changes, but only, you know, on that side, not so much ownership, but even though they passed it around amongst themselves. But I think the multiple changes and stuff, and everybody looking for, you know, the answer, which is, what do you do? Okay, well, if you're not winning, then, you know, the quarterback position becomes one that everybody looks at and says, oh, it's because of the quarterback. Well, there's a whole bunch of factors that go with it, right? That can either make you or break you. And so it makes it really tough, you know, when it does fall on your shoulders, but ultimately some of it shouldn't fall on your shoulders because it's just I had 3 head coaches in 10 years and 5 offensive coordinators. So that means every other year I got to learn a new offense. Okay, so you got to learn a new offense. You've got changeover of personnel. You have the mission changes from, hey, we want to highlight this in our offense to we want to highlight this to now we want to do a spread and, you know, run and shoot, and now we want to do eye back. And so it makes it hard to be consistent over time. And of course, what happens, of course, you know, when you're not winning, then people start pointing the finger and say, you know, we need an answer. And the coach is going to fire other coaches first, and then they'll turn around and try and replace personnel. So it can be very difficult, you know, because like I said, it's a great position to be in when things are going well because you get a lot of credit that you probably don't deserve. But when things are going bad, you probably get credit for that too.
Well, like I say, I don't mind repeating to those people this back there that knowing that you're actually regarded in this Lions history that Matthew Stafford, Bobby Lane, Greg Landry, and Scott Mitchell, that says a lot about what you actually did, you know, for sure. So, but do you feel pretty good though that you were actually mentioned in that group of quarterbacks that people think that much of you?
Well, you got to remember in 2 of the years, so I was a starter, and then I broke my hand in training camp in '87. So I was on injury reserve, and I came back off injury reserve in '88, and we were playing San Francisco, and they pulled Chuck Long out, and they put me in, and so basically I had a chance to regain my you know, position, and I went in and I started off, you know, really strong, you know, throwing the ball downfield, making things happen, and then I broke my ankle. So that means it's basically 2 years back to back with on an injury reserve, and so when I came out my 10th year. You know, we had another coaching change, and you have to adapt to another offense, and I was pretty beat up. And so, yeah, it didn't go well for me, you know, that last year, especially played Minnesota and lost to them, and then I was cut the next day. So, you know, that day happened, and you just never know when it's going to happen. But yeah, it was. I'm really happy with the career when you just look at those things and take those things out. Yeah.
So I'm kind of, go ahead, Candy.
Is there a wide receiver, past or present, that you didn't play with that you wish you had the opportunity to play with?
Oh man, all the guys that came after me. Just kidding. Certainly, I would love to have a Herman Moore or a Megatron, or Megatron, or I would. They're tall, they're strong, they're great, or you got a super fast, speedy guy, going down that you can throw the ball deep to. Somewhere, we didn't have all of that, so we're. We're more about the run game. At one point in time when I was there, of course, because back then you had to, because you could hit the quarterback. You could. All the rules were completely different and now they're all geared towards passing. So it does make a big difference. So if you didn't have a good running back, then your pass game was going to be tough because you had to have the running game to set up the passing game. The way the rules were.
Mm-hmm. All right, so here I'm gonna. So I've always wondered about this. I was thinking this a lot in the last day or so. How many yards would you have in today's NFL? Because I have a feeling that once upon a time I thought Dan Marino's record was could be breakable, but now everybody's passing the 60,000 mark. I'm talking Eric Hipple, everybody. How many yards do you think you'd have in this watered down league where everybody's playing patty cake, Baker's man? You can't hit nobody.
It's impossible for me to try and even predict that because it's a different type of game that I played. I was more of a scrapper type, whereas, more spontaneous, I like to believe. And so I wasn't the type to just sit in a pocket all day long and just, methodically move the ball down. And maybe, it would have been different if I would have been in that rule set because maybe that would have been available. But that not being the case, we were under a lot of pressure, the quarterbacks were. And so trying to make things happen is kind of where I laid my hat. So maybe it's a big play here, but you scrambled on, made another big play, or maybe audible to something, so it works out really well. But yeah, I was more into the big plays than I was the methodical march.
Yeah, but do you think you would have had 20, 30,000 passing yards with this league? This league?
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, sure. Yeah. All right, but I had much more than I got injured too. Who knows?
Come on, let's go out there, Eric, and visualize, man. We're back to the future here. Well, I don't know, in the future. This is a new millennium. We're going to get to Eric Hipple.
Well, the truth be, I might have lasted longer, sort of not taking the hits, so that's always there, quite frankly, in the league today, knocking a quarterback around is you don't see very much of it, right? And so guys are getting hurt like they did in the past, and that's the reason why they changed all the rules, right? Because they wanted to keep the quarterbacks in for the the TV market. Quite frankly, I remember, let's see. I forget what year it was, but I think there was like half of the starting quarterbacks were injured at the time. And so, the viewership really went down on Sunday games. And when that happened, of course, we're going to change the rules a little bit and get these guys so they're not getting knocked out, not getting hit, not getting hurt.
Makes me wonder what kind of a fantasy football quarterback you would be. I guess it's one to let the mind wander. So I'm kind of curious. You talk about the fact that you went through a lot of coaches, but Joey Harrington, I think, got a raw deal in Detroit because he unfortunately went through a few coaches. I think he would have done much better had he have been in a stable atmosphere. Therefore, I do not, and I repeat, I do not view Joey Harrington as a bust. What are your thoughts about Joey Harrington?
I think Joey Harrington, Chuck Long, guys who came from a strong program to where they listened, had complete faith in their college coaching and listen to them, I think those guys had a disadvantage when they came to Detroit because it wasn't as tight. It wasn't as cohesive as it should have been. And so a quarterback coming into this situation that's used to listening to a coach and doing what the coach says and being successful, you almost had to do stuff on your own, right? At certain times, whether it's an audible or you had to fight for yourself, to get things done. And so it was a little bit different. So those guys, they came in and were doing a methodical game. Chuck Long especially had a great arm, not strong arm, but had a great accurate arm. But, he was always running the ball short because that's what he was told to do by the coach. And when I replaced him, when we played San Francisco, this is when I broke my ankle. When I replaced him, I told him, I said, you got to throw the ball downfield. And but the coach, I said, yeah, but you're not the one that's going to get cut, or right? I mean, you're the one that's going to get cut, not him. And so you got to, if it's 3rd and 8 and you're throwing a 5-yard pass, it's going to catch up to you. You're going to get booed, man. You got to go downfield. And so that was my recommendation. And I think that's what his trap was, I did, this without taking any risk. And I think Harrington was the same thing.
So Eric, I have a question. In today's game, the NFL is marketing themselves really well, and they go play out in international games all the time. Is that something that did you do any of international games? And if you didn't, how do you feel about international games, like from a player's perspective?
Oh, I think they're great. I think if this style of football that we play is so unique to America, right? I mean, to the United States, that it's like when you export it, some people don't understand the game, so it's kind of hard for them to watch. But I think as time goes on, and especially with the ability to watch more of it, and the ability to through social media, through connections, through all the different podcast websites, so you can learn a lot more, right? And there's a lot more of it, right? So I think they've done a fantastic job marketing and putting everything together because they're gaining interest. They're also very, very smart and intuitive about finding new markets within an already existing market. If you look at the, this may sound callous, but if you look at the move for, to wear pink shoes, to support, breast cancer, certainly, looking for more of a female audience, putting things, together for, football camps for women to come and learn more about the game, all that. And then not only that, just, the spreading of football to flag football as well now. And so starting flag football, for youth and working their way up. So they've been very good at that. The military as a market, turn around and start doing the salute for service, at halftime where they introduce, a service member to it. So gathering that up. So you're constantly forging markets in the way that they do it. Yeah.
Okay, a couple other football things I want to get to, and then we're going to go on to the business at hand, and that's the depression. But there's no way I could bring on a show without talking a fair amount of football. And that's this. What are your thoughts about Dan Campbell and the rest of this Detroit Lions football team?
I think Dan Campbell is probably the most wanted coach to play for. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. I mean, because his enthusiasm, he believes in the players. He does, but it's if you just watch him, it's like his best interest is in the players all the time. Maybe not if they're on the outcast or whatever, when they're not playing well or screwing up. I mean, consequences just like anybody else. But when you're in the scheme and you're doing things and you're doing them and you're giving it your 100%, he's giving you that plus some back. And I think that's what makes him, a guy that people would want to play for. Enthusiastic, believes in you, gets you going, but also, is not afraid of risk, which is awesome, Yeah.
All right, last football question I'm going to talk about tonight, and then we're going to talk about what we're going to do with you, okay, and promote. When you think of Wayne Fontes, you think of Barry Sanders. I had the opportunity to cover the team back then during that era. Wayne Fontes is probably a coach I'm sure you wouldn't mind playing for. And I know if you played with Billy Sims, I can only imagine you salivating what it would have been like to have Barry Sanders in your backfield, even though the number 20 is a common denominator.
Well, I had him for 1 year. So his rookie year was my last year. So we overlapped that 1 year. And though I only got to play with him in one game, but watching him through practice, watching him through, on the field, when I was on the sideline until I started that game. But he's just a phenomenal back. And to believe it or not, the Wayne Fontes had to battle to get him drafted because the offensive coordinator, Mouse Davis, did not want to draft Barry because a guy like Barry's size doesn't fit that run and shoot offense. They need a really big back, to take the defensive end or the defensive backer. And so so Mouse didn't want to draft him. And Wayne Fontes kept going, did you see him run that drill? Did you see him run that drill? No, did you see him run that drill? The shuttle drill, it was just a phenomenal. He can shift gears, go backwards, sideways, just as fast as he can go forward, and just an amazing athlete. And so, the fact that he didn't fit the offense. It turned out to be the best offense in the world for him because it spread everybody out. And that meant that they're going to have to tackle him one-on-one. You can't really swarm and tackle, if you're all spread out. And so it turned out to be a great fit for him.
I don't think it takes a rocket scientist to realize that one of the reasons that Barry Sanders retired prematurely is when they let Wayne Fonts go, it took the wind out of his sails, because I think he wanted Fonts to be Fonts was his ultimate protector anyways. And if Wayne Fonts had stayed a coach of that team, I think he'd get another 2, 3, 4 years out of Barry Sanders. Do you agree or disagree?
Oh yeah, well he was never injured, so I'm not saying he didn't get beat up, but he was never injured. In fact, I think that Barry probably could have played in the way we were playing anyway, the way he runs. As long as he didn't get an injury, he'd still be running today. So anyway, but I think that Wayne Fonts was kind of his protector, and they kept guys like Kevin Glover. They kept guys around that Barry really worked well with and really appreciated, and that was his team. And they started breaking the team up. When they brought Bobby Ross in, and they were going to change the offense from the spread offense to an I-back, right? So that means no longer spread out as much. That means now you're going to be running up the middle and off tackle and everything else, and people get hurt. So yeah, I don't blame them.
All right. Well, now, Candy, any other questions? Then what we're going to do, Eric, is we're going to go to a station break, and then we're going to start talking about mental illness. Okay. Any questions you want to answer, Eric, at the moment?
One last question, Eric. What is your favorite play or game, moment in a game that you remember the most? That's the most memorable to you.
My most memorable play?
Yeah.
Okay. So you don't mean by offensive play, you mean single play. What was it?
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I can tell you what it is. It was on that Monday Night Football game, actually. We were third and I think it was 3rd and 6 on the 4-yard line coming out. And on the 6-yard line coming out, it was 3rd and whatever it was. And so I thought we were just going to run the ball. That's what you do. You got your back to the end zone, just run the ball out. And so when the play came in, it was a play action pass, max block, and only one guy's going to be going out. So it's like a trick play. And I'm thinking, why don't we just run the ball and run it? So anyway, but that play, we got into it and they showed up in a blitz. I go, okay, they're coming. So we did the play action pass. It sank down, and Leonard Thompson, the wide receiver, running the wrong route because he had one-on-one coverage and there's no safety. It was a full max blitz. And I had just enough time to get rid of the ball. And he ran the wrong route. So I threw it way over on the left-hand side. And he ran to it and got it. And he ran 94 yards for a touchdown. And so that was awesome. He held the record for quite a while on Monday Night Football. But that play right there, because I'll never forget the play action pass. Oh, it's setting up. I see him. I get the ball to him. And I'm standing there or laying there. I can't remember which because I'm knocked down. And listening to 80,000 people just screaming. And so it's louder and louder and louder. And I know he's going to score. And of course, he goes across the end zone. And just be able to stand and look all the way down that end zone and see him standing up across the end zone and listen to everybody. It's just so impactful and powerful. And that was, so that was it.
Okay. Now it's time. Hey, you want to follow up with it, Candy?
No, I'm good, I think.
All right, well, let's go to a station break. When we come back from that station break, Eric Hipple talks about mental illness. We're going to talk about some websites, and we're going to talk about the trials and tribulations that you've had to deal with. Stay with us. A lot more to come on the Motor City Mad Mouth Show. My name is Scott Morganoff, Motor City Mad Mouth. Pleased to be joined by my quarterback, Eric Hipple, and my everything, Candy Abling. All right, Candy, station break.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Mad Mouth Morganroth. Talks about his 40-plus years in the industry and how it has changed. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there is a plethora of great content, so go check it out. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. If you see the red subscribe button in that lower right-hand corner, that means you have not yet subscribed to us. Honestly, I don't know what you're waiting for, but just go ahead. Click it, like us, share us, and then turn your notifications on so you're notified anytime we go live. If you want to advertise, call Scott 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or have topic ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you, Scott.
All right, Candy. Well done. All right, Eric. What we're going to do is I have a few more things I want to get to. Candy's going to go over the websites, and then we're going to end the show promoting your book. How does that sound? And
Sounds good. Yeah.
And just so you know, Eric, she has her own show called Chicks and Salsa. Who knows? Maybe you might want to take a ride onto that show there, where you get to tell your story with all the women there. I'm sure they would welcome you all day long with what you're doing. Because I'll tell you one thing, that's her show. She's run that thing. I'm just making a recommendation. I think the girls would love to have you on. But I'm not done with you yet. Okay. So with that said, I know you've dealt with mental illness. You attempted it, suicide once, a situation related with the car, and you had a 15-year-old that committed suicide. How did you overcome these challenges to become involved with educating people? That's what you've done is nothing short of an inspiration, Eric.
Well, thank you. And it's been such a strange path that when you look at it one way, you say, what a tragedy. You look at the other way and say, oh, what a great thing. And then you kind of blend the two together and try to work through it. And, the mindset that I have today is just, the realization that, everybody has adversity and you actually need to have adversity, to be resilient, because you have to overcome something to learn how to do it. And hopefully, they start off small, like when you're a child and, you get told no for the first time or something like that, right? So, but, and you grow into it and you learn that way. Well, my take on resilience was always, from a physical standpoint of view, and that's how I played the game, which was when you get knocked down, you get back up again, so, hey, he's a resilient guy. He's, you can't hurt him, he gets back up again. But what I found out when I left the league, and maybe even before that or something, where I had, didn't feel right and stuff, but I'll just say, certainly when I left the game, it was a huge transition. And that's what spawned me eventually to do things about it with other players. But for myself, after it was over with, it was, the loss of identity, kind of not know what to do. The research, your resources are gone. There was nothing, there's no support system whatsoever, for former players back then.
Okay.
And so, trying to find that out, well, I started a business that was doing well, but I didn't feel well. It didn't feel right. And so that culminated in the jumping out of the car on the way to the airport. My wife was driving. And, even though waking up in the hospital, all bandaged up and stuff, I still didn't get I still didn't get it because, no, that's over with. I wouldn't face it and call it what it was. It was, it's just something happened, spontaneous. So I never did anything about it. So when I watched my son go through some of the same symptoms that I had, but not able to really understand in depth what they meant to him. And so after I lost him, then, first thing I did was just not want to feel anything. And so I went through a really destructive behavioral time, just trying to be numb. And then eventually it culminated in, a DUI and which changed a lot of things. And so I wanted answers. And so I started looking for, answers. I was actually invited to a lunch and learn down at the University of Michigan Depression Center. They just started the Depression Center. It was brand new, the idea anyway. And so I went down there to that and learned a lot of stuff about depression, which was just a foreign subject to me, even though if you look back and, my mom probably suffered from depression. She had her different paths. So it's in our family. But the learning part of it, which all of a sudden you learn something new, it's like eye-opening. And so you want to do something about it with this new information. And mine was, why can't we get this information out to more people so maybe we can have less suicides, but not have somebody who's suffering might have a place to go, or at least aware of what this thing is. So it's more education-based, to start off with just outreach. And so that's what really started the turnaround and coming back around.
Okay. So,
I could go on and tell you where it went from there if you want, or if you got a question, you can. But
well, that's okay. Well, I'm going to continue where I'm going because Candy has a path too. So you're doing great. I love what you're giving. You're giving a lot of insightful feeling. I know what, listen, I'm not afraid to admit this. Many years ago when I was living in Arizona, I attempted what you did once because of an ex-wife who wasn't supportive of what I was doing, being the sole breadwinner. So I
Yeah.
can appreciate where you went through there under different circumstances, but it's a disease. But the main thing is you have to have a good support system, and that's the key. And I like myself, you did, and more power to you. I know the traumatic part of your son going, having done it, certainly didn't help matters, but the fact that you're doing something about it, it kind of reminds me of many years ago when Mark Bonicani got hurt and Nick Bonicani supported him. And I know that you obviously are a close knit family. With that said, I know the one thing you do is you deliver speeches on suicide prevention and mental illness at high schools, youth groups, members of the military and their families and corporations. Tell me more about that.
Well, the first thing I did with all this newfound information was trying to get information out to my own population, which is former players or athletes that when they transition out, or a college guy when he's supposed to, but he gets hurt, so he doesn't get drafted. That kind of transition. Right. And that soon took a turn towards veterans and military, because they lived kind of the same thing, always moving, always training, always going around. And then when they leave, their whole identity is challenged. Who am I? I don't have a uniform anymore. And all this. So the support system and stuff. So I kind of moved through that. And then, and that kind of had a place. But then my heart, was really where the schools were, because my son was 15 as a freshman at the time. Then, it's this trying to get to our youth early. And so that became the focus. And so I started working with, speaking to schools, but also working with the foundation, the Mental Health Foundation of Western Michigan, and their school program. And that's grown, to where now we're in like 120 different high schools, I think, or 120 schools, and then and some businesses as well. And I think that part's really interesting to me, because getting to somebody before they experience some of these things, so they at least have a knowledge background of like, oh, so this is what that is, and so I can do something about it, instead of feeling alone and rejected and isolated and sad and negative and everything else, where we go and get help, and then we quit asking questions. So let's get the information as fast as we can down to the youth. At least they know what to call it, know what it is, and so they can support somebody if they need to. At least be an understanding. They can listen, so it gives them a lot more information, and that's well, today I feel like I'm in a really upstream, way in advance of suicide. Let's get up there early and teach the stuff, so we don't have to wait until somebody is, in imminent danger.
Yeah, see, I'm really pleased that you've been able to spread it out. I mean, again, I credit you for talking with the high schools and the youth group. People have to get it figured out at that age. And by then, the military, we know that will be one of the things I talk about in my upcoming series about how military is affected and families and corporations. So what you've able to do is you've got 5 pieces of this equation here that you're trying to address a very important situation that you've had to live through in more levels than one. I mean, how does it feel to be able to reach out to that many different groups and be able to get your message across? Because every one of them, you can't take them lightly.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. So, when you look at it that way and you spread things out and say, wow, that's a lot of different things. But from where I'm coming from, my point of view is what I started finding out was, well, okay, I'll work with former players. Oh yeah, because we all have this thing. We've all gone through transition. Okay, well, guess what? Military does this. And so when you put the two side by side, they can talk about how they feel afterwards, because it doesn't matter this part, they still have the same commonality, because we have emotions and we feel. So then, so you start talking to, high school kids or whatever, law enforcement, whatever it is, you find out, well, you know what? It's not that far off the mark with them either, because we're all human beings. We all have emotions. We all go through things. There's not anybody that goes through this life without going through something, right? And so let's just be prepared, so when something comes, at least we can name it, but also we know where to get the support from, and we know that there's something that can be done about it. So it's not the end of the story; it's actually the beginning of the story. And
right.
And so for me, it's like it's in here. Okay, it might be different populations, but if you strip away all that, we're human beings. So I don't care if it's you or it's somebody living, 10,000 miles away. Yeah, human being has emotions, sadness, happiness, joy, regret, all those things. And so we have something in common to listen to and talk about.
Anything you want to add, Candy?
That was such a tough time for you with you and your son. What resources did you reach out to help you with that, going through, that dark area? Because let's face it, there's a lot of people that face that dark area and go through, and not always do we have support or know that there is support out there.
Yeah. Well, I didn't use any support, so that was the problem. So anyway, even with my own stuff, but then after when Jeff was not doing well and feeling, not good, I didn't use any resources then either. I took him to, primary care doctor basically, and just said, well, he doesn't have the flu, he doesn't have this, so Jeff got to go to school, so I'll start driving it because he didn't want to go. So anyway, so those little things, but after his death, then it's really hard for me to even go back in that mindset again when I got that phone call, and the disbelief, the surrealness of it, the guilt, the shame, the anger, not at him, at me, and it just didn't feel real, and coming home and seeing it all, I didn't know how I was going to get through it, and I don't know that I almost didn't. Yeah.
Okay, Eric, I see you're the outreach coordinator of the Depression Center of the University of Michigan. They've done a documentary film that features you. How much do you enjoy doing it?
Doing the speaking and going out, you mean?
Well, I think from what my research says, they've done a documentary film that features you from the Outreach Center. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, I've been in several. Okay, so from different points of view. So I've been involved in, from being the one who, that's talking about my own issues. I've been on certain, I can't think of what it's called, about talking about, having, lost somebody. So as a survivor,
Right.
that side of it. And I've talked about it from somebody who has knowledge in speaking, on terms of something we can do, and here's some resources, and here's a pathway, and here's what happened, here's what it is,
Right.
So from an educational standpoint of view. Where I was just the one, in fact, we just viewed it. It was shot a few years ago, but and this might be the one you're talking about, which was Death is Not the Answer. I know I was involved in a couple when I was at the University of Michigan, but Death is Not the Answer is about what do you do to get past it or to survive it, but also how do you start thriving again? And we just showed that to a parent group from 2 different high schools just last week. Yeah, and then had a panel. Yeah.
Okay, I see you co-authored a study about depression and pain in the retired professional player. I know that that's a really difficult transition when you go from being a player where you're around the team all the time, you're so engrossed with the team activities, and all of a sudden you go to civilian life, as we like to say, being normal type of individual without that regiment. So tell me a little bit about that. That's amazing. A lot of retired players have a hard time making that transition from being a football player, because remember, it starts at back in the youth, the high school, college, and then the
9 years
pros,
old.
and that's all they even know. And all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're back, you're no longer doing it anymore. All of a sudden you can't do it no matter whether it's physical, and you run into all kinds of issues. That had to be rough on you.
Well, there's a ton of psychological issues to go with that, which is, if you're started in your youth, so you've been known identity as a football player all the way up through, I don't know, until juniors or pros, or until you, in my case, I was 32 years old, when all of a sudden, you're not doing it anymore. And so, yeah, I mean, you don't know anything else other than basically, this is my identity. There's a certain amount of celebrity that comes with it. There's a certain amount of responsibility that comes with it. So you're somebody, okay? And then to be dropped off, so that's difficult. The research that we did was where we sent it out to a bunch of former players, and we were actually looking for depression rates. But what came back was this transition thing, because we had a couple of open-ended questions. about, what was the transition like for you? And it was like, didn't know it'd be like this, no support, no identity. So it was, everybody had that. So it told me it's a really hard transition. So at the time, there was nothing being done for mental health or that. So we started focusing on that. It's also not too far from the time when the brain injury and stuff started kind of showing up. So guys were showing up with, not for mental health, they're showing up because of brain injury or possible CTE stuff and the symptoms they had. But the symptoms are very, very much alike depression. And so you really can't tell which is which, right? So we just started treating them for depression because you can't diagnose CTE, right? Until it's post-mortem. And so, but all of a sudden a lot of guys start coming out, and I found out that there's a lot of guys that were mentally unhealthy. If you think about, not everybody gets into football for the pure reason of just playing the game. There's fear, why guys will play, trying to get out of certain circumstances. Same thing with military. Giant signs of military, because they want to serve our country. Sometimes it's to try and find something better than what they're living in now. And so there's players like that too, that come from tough neighborhoods, that this is their thing. And all of a sudden when it's over with, now everybody they know, their support system back home, at home, might be dysfunctional. So they have to deal with that again now, going back into it. So just a lot of stuff there, that you got to be aware of, that can mask itself very easy. And it's really easy for a player to say, "Oh yeah, it must be CTE because I've never experienced this before," but they just never been aware of it before either coming out. And so this is their first maybe awareness of what mental health issues might be, like depression.
I can imagine. So I've seen you with former Lions quarterback Eric Kramer, whom, by the way, this is a personal opinion, should never. By the way, they should never have. He should have retained that starting job instead of Rodney Pete when they took him to the NFC Championship game. And I've even told Eric, you think that's one of the biggest mistakes they ever made, when Eric did not have an opportunity to become the incumbent starter? Because I know Wayne Fonts said you can't lose your job due to injury. Well, don't tell that to Tom Brady and Drew Bledsoe. And how did that work out? But let's talk about Eric Kramer. I know. What have you done with Eric, and how's he doing these days?
He was just in town. I just saw him 3 days ago. He's doing really well. And he's motivated to make change himself, and so he's trying to put stuff together in programs. But he's doing really well. Like I said, he's active. If you've never met him before, you would never be able to tell that he had gone through anything. Especially a bullet to the head and surviving it. That's incredible when you think about that. But so what he was going through and kind of what I've gone through, I'm a little bit older. I'm like 7 years older than he is. Then we're friends. And so when he was starting to struggle a little bit, he had lost his son as well. So very similar, right? Certain circumstances. And so I was trying to reach out and help him when he was still doing broadcasting. And he kind of got away from that. I knew he was suffering from some depressive illnesses and talking to him and stuff. And then eventually, in his attempt, it was, heartbreaking, because we're trying to get him as much help as possible. But I'll say this, you overcome adversity. Thank God he didn't die, because he's a force to reckon with now in the mental health, efficacy area. So, and he's, he's doing good.
Well, before Jared Goff, he was the answer to a trivia question about the quarterback that won the last playoff game, and that was Eric Kramer. Obviously, he whipped the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody certainly enjoyed that back home in Detroit. And Eric Kramer, more power to him. I still think he should have been the starting quarterback, not Rodney Pete. That's one. I've even told him that. It doesn't really matter. Anything you haven't heard before. All right, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to shift the narrative over to Candy. What she's going to do now, Eric, is she's going to bring up each of those websites that you want to promote. When she's done going over each and every one of those, she's going to bring me back. I'm still here. I'll be listening to you and Candy go over the website. And then when I come back on and start talking, we're going to talk about your book. And if you're interested, maybe you and I can do a book exchange. You send me one of your autographed copies, I'll send you mine. And then that way we'll always have this as a memory for us as well. Candy, take over. You have some things that you want to talk about the website, and please help him promote it. And then we'll go back and talk about his book. Great stuff so far, Eric. We're hitting the stretch run, but now it's time to really get the message out there as well. Go ahead, Candy.
So the first website I have is www.aftertheimpact.org. So tell us a little bit about this organization.
That's my fault for not I'll tell you why. Because After the Impact is after COVID is no longer. So I apologize for that, but
Okay.
it was formed with the ourselves and the Gridiron Greats formed a formation so we could treat football players and veterans together, and so that was built for the funding, and it ran its course almost like 9 years, which was fantastic. We did a lot of good work, but when COVID hit, the funding sources dried up, it's hard to raise money at those cases, so that went. So that's not what it was. It did a lot of good. Go ahead, hit the other one if you want. And I've got a couple. I'm sorry, this one was the one that did the studies. So the study's over with. So we're doing the study on. Let me give you the ones that I have. Okay, so anyway, these are, and it's my fault if I sent those because those are in history, along the way. So were all building blocks along the way. But neurological studies was the study that we did for It was actually looking for pituitary dysfunction in the brain. So you could go along with the CTE stuff as brain injury research. And we found about 80% of the people that we were testing that were former players that came here for depression or whatever it might be. We started testing them on their pituitary dysfunction hormone, and excuse me. And about 80% of them were deficient in hormone production. So hypopituitarism. And so that being the case, then we knew something was going on, right? So diffuse axonal injury, it's brain injury that we looked at. But that study wrapped up, and they're producing all the data and everything else, and so that'll probably get released. But so that's what that one was. Yeah. What else? Let's see. Be nice. There we go. This is that's Be Nice. It stands for. In fact, I've got a shirt on. Be Nice. Okay, which is nice stands for notice, invite, challenge, and empower. So notice, invite, challenge, and empower. It is the school program that we have for students for schools, and it's student driven. So all the materials and videos and everything else that we have is designed so a school peer group can choose what they want to use or what not, or implement their own, or even get their own resources and put them together, and we share. And so like that 120 schools that we're talking about, it's accumulation of all this material and stuff that we have that we share with. And so it's a student-driven program. Fantastic. If you want to have a program that makes sense, it's upstream, it's easy to remember, and it's very pointed. So it's actually an action plan. That's what notice, invite, challenge, and empower are. And it was introduced by Mental Health Foundation of Western Michigan. Yeah. So be nice. .org.
Okay, that's the last one I had.
There's VetLife, vetlife.org. So it's
VetLife.
VetLife today.org. That's their website. VetLifetoday.org.
Sorry, I should get it in there. Hang on.
Yeah. VetLife Today.
Today. Hold on. Let me edit it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
VetLife Today. It's a foundation that helps veterans find the resources in the transition, like what football players do, right? So when you make that transition, where's the resources at? How do you file for your with the VA? What are all of them? Because there's a lot of things that are out there, but it's just hard to figure out which one you should have or not have. Remember, you're coming out of this, and all of a sudden, your life is now up to you to find your support systems, even though they might have them. But there's so many things that are out there. Where do you begin to choose from? And so these are all vetted things that we've done. We run the Vet Fest, which is like 5,000 veterans, and their family members will show up, and it's all free for them to experience. You have a bounce house, band, all that kind of stuff. So it's fun. But in the meantime, they have the tables for resources as well. And they're working on an app right now, which is a Battle Buddy, which is very cool. So how to get your information.
Yeah, please do. Please do. We'll put the stuff up on our website. We always like to hear great places to support, you know.
And the last one is zeroed in on Michigan, but it's the Michigan Heroes Museum. So it's MI Heroes, so MI Heroes .org. Yeah, MichiganHeroes.org. Yeah, and it's a museum that highlights the sacrifice that service members have made that are Michiganders. So and it goes all the way back to like World War I, even. So it's celebrating its 50th year this year, and it's just a unique type of setting because it's not like a bunch of things to look at. There's lockers with all a person's identity, what they did, and stuff that they have, and hearing it from them, and so it's pretty cool to go through and look at all the stories.
That's great. Any other websites or organizations you want us to help promote?
Mine's Eric-Hipple.com.
Eric-Hipple.org.
.com. Yeah.
.com.
Yeah. That's if anybody wants any information or want to reach out, they can do it through that. Yeah.
There you go, Eric-Hipple.com. So what's good about these being on the screen, Eric, is when they go on our YouTube channel, they'll be able to visualize it, and they'll be able to write it down, and they'll go right to it. So that's why we had you put up. That's why she's putting up on the screen. That's why she has a special segment for each and every one of these. Because you think anybody can remember anything I have to say about this? No.
That's usually what happens. But as long as you drip a little bit here, drip a little bit there, when somebody actually needs something and you've heard it, it's more likely they'll find attention to it rather than if they don't know it doesn't exist.
Oh, I can't. Nobody's gonna sit there and tell me a lot of us aren't visual because we are. That's why she put this stuff up there. Great stuff. All right. Anything else, Candy, you want to put up there? We're gonna promote his book really quickly. So after the Motor City Man Mouse Show, we have Fire Up, hosted by Candy Evelyn, and she'll have her group in the country club there. Don't you miss it. And Eric, I don't know if you have a chance to subscribe to our YouTube channel, South Florida Tribune. It's free to subscribe. All you have to do is do what Candy says, hit that red subscribe button. She'll tell you how to do it after the show and whatever. But meanwhile, let's talk about the book that you've written, a book called Real Men Do Cry, published in 2008. Explain what a person should take out of it and where can they purchase the book?
It can be purchased from the publisher, which is qualityoflife.com. So QOL.com. QOLpublishing.com or Amazon. So you can get it on Amazon. Probably the easiest way to do it. When the book was put out, because I had gone through all this stuff, with Jeff, and then my own turnaround and got on the right page, and and started promoting stuff. I thought it'd be important how many people are out there that were like me that wouldn't cry in public ever. Probably wouldn't cry. Not in public either. So, because of the stigma attached to that, right? And so, but I found that actually in certain things and certain times, and you have to, if you don't express those emotions, then they can turn that deadly, I guess, is the best thing to say. Is you try and bury them, you try and hold them down, but they're going to resurface at some point in time anyway. But then you walk around negative, resentful, not gratitude, and that can be very dangerous. And so I want people to understand that, as far as what people saw and said, oh my gosh, starting quarterback and everything else, we can have this and go through this. And not only that, but have family member go through it. That I think it's important that everybody should actually be aware of that.
How long did it take you to write that?
Trying to make myself as an example of getting rid of the stigma and just be human. Yeah.
How long did it take you to write it?
Well, it was hard because you have to open up a lot of things, that you try to deal with. I remember my wife said, "You have to put everything in there." You're trying to educate somebody. Yes. So let's bare our soul a little bit, so the good and the bad, and the ugly. But it took a while, and I wrote like the first 30 in hand, and then I started just dictating and sending them off to get those edited down and with
well, the main thing is you got it done. So one other thing I want to ask you.
Yeah.
Do you travel outside of Michigan to promote what you're doing,
Yeah.
or do you mainly you do? And where are some of the places that you go to get your message? Because you certainly have a great cause, and it should be something that you're able to travel and be able to promote. I mean, what you're doing is unbelievable. If I thought highly of you as a quarterback, what you're doing now, I think your off the field accomplishments are probably going to, be even better than the ones you had on the field. So I commend you what you're doing. Where do you travel to get this message out?
Well, all over. Anybody who needs it, first of all, so I can, excuse me, sorry. So, I mean, all over the state. So, Florida, Indiana, Wisconsin, California. Yeah, I mean, basically anybody. I've done, obviously conferences, some mental health conferences, suicide prevention walks. Speaking. I've done 2 open pit coal mines, right? Which is, for the safety training for the supervisors and for the employees, stress control. Been to New York, spoke there. Been with the Navy, every Navy base that's in this world I've been to. Travel a lot over a course of 11-year period with them. So doing stuff around them. Yeah, just anywhere that I get called on, I go. So there's quite a few places.
Are you okay? You doing all right?
Yeah.
Just making sure. All right. Well, I'll tell you what. Great stuff. All right, Candy, why don't you, I'm glad that you had an opportunity to be on the show and telling us your courageous story. Candy, take us the rest of the way.
You want me to
Well, I mean,
do a station break?
Well, no. I mean, do a station break. Take us home.
Okay. South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by our host, Scott, the Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. Talks about how media has changed over the course of his career, 40 plus years. Some good pictures, some good stories. Go get your copy today. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Google, and Apple Books. There's also a link on our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there is a plethora of great content, so go check out the website. If you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. And if you see that red subscribe button in the lower right-hand corner, that means you have not yet subscribed to our channel. Please do so. Click it, like us, share us, and then turn on the notifications so you're notified every time we go live. If you want to advertise, call Scott, 954-304-4941. And if you want to be a guest or have topic ideas, you can always email us at southfloridatribune@gmail.com.
Now, Eric, I want to tell you, I can't thank you very much enough for being on the show and telling us your courageous story. It is an unbelievable story. And I hope that we give you as much exposure as we can to get your messages out. And you're free to send us anything you want to Candy at the South Florida Tribune at gmail.com. And she'll be more than happy to put it on the website, whether it's links to your websites or anything you want, even your book. She'll even take a link on there. They can buy the book through our website. We don't get any money off of it. I don't think. We just want you to get the proceeds, whatever you want. So you and Candy have been handling the email stuff as well. So anything that we can do to help you, Eric, your nonprofits or anything, we're family here, Eric. That's how we do things. We'll go out of our way to definitely go ahead and help you any way we can. There's other places you can come on other shows to get it out there, and we'll let you make the decision which one you feel is suitable the best. So, it's been a great privilege to have you on the show. We appreciate you spending this amount of time to tell your story, and I hope that we can get you the necessary exposure to bring awareness to mental illness, because you're living proof that you're a winner. You always have been, and as Eddie Prather said, thank you, Eric. I know he's been watching the whole thing on YouTube, and there'll be a lot more comments that we're going to get via YouTube as well. So, I can't thank you very much for doing this. I've enjoyed having you on before. I'm even more happy to have you on tonight to get your story out there on something that needs to be addressed an awful lot more and hopefully we'll have a chance to work together on other projects in front of different circumstances and platforms, so you can continue to hammer that message home.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anything you want to add, Candy, real quick?
No, and any lasting thoughts you want to leave the audience with, Mr. Eric?
The only thing I'll say is I'm happy to see trends that are happening in mental health that are, to me, very positive, and that's the crisis centers that are starting up to where a person can just walk in that way, or the 788 number or 988 number, 988 number, to where instead of calling 911, so that's been good. And Blue Cross Blue Shield in Michigan, I've had a relationship with them over the last 5 years, and they're working hard in this area as well, trying to get meet people rather than waiting for a phone call to happen to a hospital or something, but meeting them where they are. And so it's that's a great trend that I see happening. Yeah, so good.
Okay. All right, Candy, give everybody a preview for what they're in for a fire up. I know you'll prepare a few minutes, but nobody prepares faster than a show than she does, Eric. Anybody could go ahead and do her own show as quickly and unbelievable way she does. I'd like to find somebody better. There isn't anybody. Go ahead, give them a quick preview. I know Smoke and Jeremy's probably helping you on the back end.
So tonight on Fire Up, we're going to talk a little bit about the MLB playoffs. Obviously, the wild card round will be just about completely done by the time we I think by the time we go on, or at the end, I think there's one more because the Boston and the Yankees series is right now in the middle. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking a little bit about NFL. We're going to talk a little bit about fantasy football, and if we think that's hurting the fandom of teams or not. And one last thing, we're going to say, how many blocked field goals do we think we'll see this season, considering we've seen how many so far?
Well, Eric, I'll tell you one thing. I still think you would have gotten 30,000 yards in today's NFL, number one. And number two, I can only imagine what kind of fantasy football player you would have been, because you knew how to rush the football as well as pass it. So I guess we'll never know, but it's certainly worth bringing up and fantasizing.
Well, I agree with you. 30,000. That sounds good.
Now 30,000? You got it.
All right.
All right. Well, with that said, that does conclude this edition of Motor City Man Mouse Show. I want to thank Eric Hipple as our special guest. Candy Ampley is my co-host. So on behalf of my dynamic duo here, thank you very much. Fire Up is next. Thanks very much for doing this. Eric and Candy will be in touch with you about other opportunities that we have. Hopefully benefit you as well. All right, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.